Good day, buenos dias. I'm Rodica Nitu from the World Meteorological Organization, Geneva office. I'm the project manager of the Global Cryosphere Watch, and I have the honor to be the moderator of today's session. Thank you. Carolina, please.
Thank you very much, Rodica, and muy buenos días. Hello, everyone. My name is Carolina Adler. I'm the Executive Director of the Mountain Research Initiative, and I'm joining you here from Switzerland. And I'm very pleased to be a part of this panel and looking forward to commemorate with all of you this very special day. Thank you.
Stefan, please.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. That's Stefan Schneidebauer here. I'm sitting in Bolzano in Italy, and I'm the head of the GLOMOS office in Bolzano. GLOMOS stands for Global Mountain Safeguard Research. It's an honor to be on this panel. I'm looking forward to discuss these important issues with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Roberta, please.
Thank you, Rodica. Buenos días a todos. Me llamo Roberta Boscolo. I am a scientific officer of the World Meteorological Organization, a colleague of Rodica, and I'm specialized in climate services for the energy sector. The energy sector, hydropower, it really depends from what is happening up in the mountains. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to discuss such important issues that has many impact on many sectors here today in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Bolívar, please.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Bolívar Cáceres. Actualmente soy el responsable del programa de glaciología en el Ecuador y he estado involucrado en la elaboración del segundo informe sobre océano y criosfera del IPCC, presentado en el mes de diciembre pasado, y básicamente he colaborado en el capítulo relacionado con alta montaña. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Bolívar. Manuel, por favor.
Thank you, Rodica. Buenos días con todos y todas. Greetings from Quito, Ecuador. My name is Manuel Peralvo. I work in the Consortium for the Sustainable Development of the Andean Ecoregion, CONDESAN, and I coordinate a thematic area that is focused on sustainable livelihoods and landscapes, and also coordinate research activities in a regional initiative focused on Andean forests.
Thank you, Manuel, and thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. And welcome to today's panel on sustainable management of mountain ecosystems in a changing climate, from science to policy to action. And this panel is organized as part of the first World Virtual High Mountain Summit in Colombia, with the theme of monitoring systems for high mountain forest, paramos, and glaciers. And I welcome your participation for such an important topic that is being discussed at an important moment in celebration of the International Mountain Day. Dear audience, in the next 55 minutes or so, you will hear from the participants of this panel on the topic of sustainable management of mountain ecosystems. And your questions to speakers are more than welcome, and we will endeavor to respond to them as early as possible. The panel will consist of presentations from each speaker of about 6 to 7 minutes, followed by a lively discussion on the topics introduced by each speaker. So again, thank you for joining this panel discussing the interplay between science, policy, and action as the 3 critical pillars for sustainable management of mountain ecosystems. And without further ado, I would like to start by inviting Carolina to share from the experience of Mountain Research Initiative and especially in the context of MRI sustaining vibrant mountain social and ecological systems. And in this context, Carolina, I would like to invite you to speak about the role that you see for MRI in enabling pathways and transformations to sustainable mountain ecosystems, and especially in the Andean region. And if you could, I would invite you to speak about the role of partnerships with the local, regional, national organizations. So the floor is yours, Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronica. I'll be very pleased to share this presentation with you. So we can already move on to the next slide, please. So just to give you a very brief background as to what the MRI is, the MRI was founded back in 2001 following extensive discussions among the research community on how to respond to the UN Assembly call to achieve an integrated approach for observing, modeling, and investigating global change in mountain regions, including the impacts of those changes, and of course the impacts that we ourselves as human activities, how those also impact upon the mountain ecosystem. And I'm pleased to announce that MRI will be in fact celebrating its 20th anniversary in the following year. And we're pleased to also celebrate the community that has been built over 20 years. Today, we are an international global research coordination network with thousands of members working across mountain regions all over the world. And we seek to not only fulfill this founding objective, which was set out for us to achieve, but also through that support the network itself to engage in a science policy society relationship and process of co-production of knowledge. I think it's important for us to remember that this is a relationship building process, and I will touch upon that in the following slide. The network itself is supported by a coordination office, which is hosted at the University of Bern in Switzerland, with funding support primarily from the Swiss Academy of Sciences. Next slide, please. So indeed, knowledge to support decisions, actions, and transformations to sustainable mountain development is a process that follows many pathways. And one of the key things that the Mountain Research Initiative does in contribution to that is to galvanize the network of researchers to generate knowledge that not only allows us to understand the systems that are interacting in the mountain space, but also to understand and identify what we as communities also value as targets for achieving that sustainability, and also what's needed for us to do in practice to not only assess and evaluate those transformations, but more importantly, how to activate action towards that. And the MRI Coordination Office itself has 7 key functions that support this network of thousands of people that need to be connected and continuously also galvanized through activities to be able to reach those goals. And one of those key objectives, or rather functions, of the MRI Coordination Office is to indeed facilitate the Science Policy Society interaction. One of the ways that we do that, and one of the pathways through which we make contributions to transformations to sustainability is, for example, through the inputs that we provide to global assessments and regional assessments, as well as local and national knowledge needs. One of the key things that we are undertaking at this very moment, for instance, is on making contributions through the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in contribution, of course, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And it's not only about bringing the scientific knowledge needed to be able to determine targets and also mobilize action to undertake sustainable development, but it's also a two-way interactive exchange of needs as well. For the community, it's very important for us to be exposed to the science policy dialogue that is part of that negotiation as well, for us to learn about what's relevant in the context for policy making. So this is indeed not something that we necessarily see as an interface, but rather a system that goes back and forth between the science and the policy, and of course in contribution and support for communities and society in general. Next slide, please. So one key example that took place not too long ago was the High Mountain Summit, which took place last October in Geneva, Switzerland, at which we had the opportunity to co-chair alongside our colleagues from Canada. And this was a unique opportunity because this is precisely the dynamic that allowed for a fruitful exchange between the science, policy, and practice communities. So it wasn't just simply bringing scientific inputs for them to be elaborated, but rather this was a process of also negotiating what's needed and how to achieve it, and to articulate very clearly also the resources and commitment long-term that's needed to be able to achieve this. And one of the things that I'm very pleased about this particular summit that we are participating in today is one of those key ways through which we can maintain the momentum that was generated over a year ago. So I'm very pleased that the colleagues, the government of Colombia, and indeed our colleagues in IDEAM took the initiative to continue this dialogue, although it's virtual, but it's important to still maintain this going forward. Next slide, please. So what are some of the concrete and ways through which the MRI can also support the region itself? There are multiple ways, and I won't have the capacity to go over all of the detail necessary. Nevertheless, I would like to point out three ways through which we can concretely do this, but also these are activities that are already taking place as we speak. One of those is GeoMountains, which is the global network for observations and information in mountain environments, which mobilizes this global community to identify, collate, and make accessible this transboundary inter- and transdisciplinary data and information pertaining to our precious mountains. And this is a key flagship activity of the Mountain Research Initiative, which we are happy to continue to coordinate and support going forward. And this is also part of what's part of the broader program on adaptation and altitude, which is supported by the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. So through that program, of course, one of the key regions that are part of our focus and scope is the Andean and Latin American region. So these are very concrete programs already underway in which we can integrate and also listen to the needs of our colleagues and communities from the region in those monitoring and reporting exercises that are so crucial going forward. And the third element that I want to also highlight is one research collaboration and network hub that is also supported through the MRI with funding from Switzerland and others, working at the ecosystems, health and climate change nexus. And this is about not only sustaining research collaborations, but also making sure that capacity building is also enhanced as part of that. If anything that we've learned this year with the COVID pandemic experience is that these other elements are also, for example, health, are just as important for us to be able to integrate in those knowledge systems for sustainable development going forward. So ecosystems being a very important element, of course, health and climate change and the nexus on that is quite key. And with that, I would be happy to take questions, of course, and comments also from my panel colleagues. We're very much looking forward to making sure that these platforms and possibilities are also at the disposal of our colleagues and communities here in this region. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Carolina. Much appreciated the summary you provided. And I propose that we continue with the rest of presentations and then return to questions from the panel members to the other panel members. So I would like to invite Stefan My question to Stefan is, given the fact that United Nations University is the academic arm of the United Nations, how does the UNU-GLOMOS program in particular bridge between academia and the United Nations system, and thereby support science-based policymaking towards transformative resilience in mountain regions, please?
Thank you, Rodica. We can already go to the second slide. Yeah, thank you very much. Some introductory words from my side for the GLOMOS program. As you have nicely introduced me, Rodica, it's United Nations University that behind it, but not only that, it's a joint program actually between the United Nations University and in particular the Institute for Environment and Human Security sitting in Bonn, together with the Institute URAC Research placed here in Bolzano in Italy. And the role that we play as United Nations University is to be the academic arm of the United Nations. At the same time, we are scientists, so we try to bridge between the two worlds of academia and the UN. Our main purpose of the program GLOMOS is to conduct applied and transdisciplinary research to support the livelihoods and the sustainable mountain development. GLOMOS again stands for Global Mountain Safeguard Research. So we focus on mountain research with the purpose to achieve or to go ahead towards a sustainable mountain development. At the same time, we facilitate a greater recognition of mountain issues within international framework in the role as the UN arm, and in particular to support the agenda for sustainable development. In the center of this slide, we have what we call our butterfly with our focus objective in the center, the social transformation and livelihoods and developments. And you can see the various main fields of our research around that. So we have mountain ecosystems and energy, which is linked to the Paris Climate Agreement or the land degradation neutrality. We have mountain infrastructure and engineering with a new urban agenda linked to that. We have in particular mountain disaster risk reduction as one field where we work in, and this is closely related to the Sendai framework, disaster risk reduction. And we have the mountain governance and health issues that also leads in general to the SDGs. Of course, as a rather fresh and new program from only now 1.5 years age, we can not support and provide expertise as such in all of these fields, but we have the two institutions, United Nations University, EHS in Bonn, and the whole mountain expertise of various institutes here at URAC Research that can support us. And we have some more concrete goals and visions of the program, which is on one hand, as mentioned before, to do really concrete mountain research. And this research is of relevance then, so it's always applied research, and we aim for relevance at the various levels, international, regional, national, and local levels. But at the same time, we also look very much into the individual mountain regions and try to very locally support activities with our research work on the way towards sustainable development. Another point which is very important for us is that we try to raise awareness of the importance of mountain regions and their social ecological systems worldwide. And we try to do that in particularly in international meetings and such as what Carolina has introduced before, the Mountain Summit. And then, of course, as a research organization, an academic institution, we support capacity building, and we have our own students and PhD work that support us in our activities. You have the next slide, please. So this is again roughly showing the various levels on the left-hand side where we get involved with local needs and knowledge, and then scale up to national policies and in particular for mountain areas, very important as they often and almost always cover various countries, to look into regions with various countries in mountain areas, mountainous areas, and we go up to the level of international policies and UN frameworks, and therefore we need to have these partners at the various levels. So as I said, we are very closely linked to UN system, and in Bonn we have lots of other UN agencies directly neighboring our offices there, but we have lots of good contacts in academia. Of course, we also are part of global networks and MRI, but it goes down to governmental institutions at national and local level. And to the right-hand side, you see some concrete examples of our first activities during the last 1.5 years. We participated, as said before, the Global Mountain Summit, but we also had organized side sessions at the COP25 in Madrid, or at the Academic Mountain Conference in Innsbruck in 2019, or at the Expo of the National Adaptation Plan in Korea in 2019. At the same time, as mentioned, we try to work also with local and regional partners and organizations in the various mountain regions. So we have very good contacts to the various mountain regions, in particularly also already in the Andes, not only through CONDESAN. I can have the next slide, please. So we also have partners at the University Los Andes in Bogota and the Alexander von Humboldt Institution. And we try to, in this slide, to connect a little bit the GLOMOS activities, what's going on in the Paramos, and what we could imagine where GLOMOS can support and where the needs are. So on the left-hand side, we see all the important ecosystem services that the Paramo provide to the lowlands as well. Very important part that we do not only talk about the highlands, but the lowlands as well. And we have the various stressors such as climate change, but also mining activities. We have land use changes and unsustainable land management. At the same time, we have already some initiatives that goes towards conserving the Paramos with payment for ecosystem services. We have certain research and monitoring activities already going on. And we have, in particularly in some local initiatives, community engagement. And when we look at the right-hand side, at the main parts of where GLOMOS is active, we nicely can support those activities. And I would underline here, for time reasons, just this very important point of participatory approaches and getting involved the local communities in order to achieve sustainable development. You can see in the lower right pictures when we visited the Paramos close to Bogota in 2018 with a professor from the university in Bogota, where we could have a first insight into the situation at place. Thank you very much. There's one more slide, because I would like to end up with the sentence from our Secretary General, from Antonio Guterres, who said that the coming years will be a vital period to save the planet and to achieve sustainable, inclusive and human development. And we would be happy to support and contribute here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. I would like to invite now Roberta, and Roberta, my colleague from WMO, is actively involved in several initiatives which WMO leads in the Andean region. And for that reason, Roberta, I would like to invite you to share with us here today how the framework of WMO activities, especially in the Andean region, could enable the translation of science into sustainable user-driven services, and to enable, in the end, the sustainable management of mountain ecosystems and the protection of livelihoods in the region. So, Roberta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rodica. And indeed, the World Meteorological Organization is starting in the implementation of a project. It's called ENANDES, is in the region. And ENANDES stands for Enhancing Adaptation Capacity of the Andean Communities Through Climate Services. Is a project funded by the Adaptation Fund and involves Colombia, Peru, and Chile. So already in the title of this project, you can see that we are going to work with communities and provide benefit to communities, but through the lenses or through the process of the climate services. And this is the way that WMO is framing activities in the adaptation activities in the region, in the Andean region, through strengthening the weather and climate and hydrological services full value chain. How does look, this value chain? Rodica, please, the next slide. And this is just a schematic that is taken from a WMO technical report on the economic value of weather, water, and climate services. So on the bottom part is actually what the WMO Met services they do. They provide products, information through the observation, modeling, and forecasting. They deliver products, but in order to add value for the communities and really address the adaptation measure and the policy, we need to add value to these products. And this is what we call it the service delivery, which is the upper part of this schematic. And this is the way that we add value to the products. And it's basically from 3 steps. First of all is a strong engagement with the users of the economic sectors, of the beneficiaries of the services. We need to understand their needs, their requirements, what they need to build resilience and adapt to climate change. And in order to sustain the ecosystem and manage the resources and therefore to sustain their livelihood. The second step is really involve the users in the co-design and co-production of the tailored products, and also helping them to timely deliver this information through communication channel that the Met Service, together with the stakeholders, has to find out what they are. It's remote communities, smallholder farmers in the mountains, or the water managers. And third is the collection and feedback from the users so that we can continuously improve these services, and also we can analyze what are the benefits of coming out from these services and demonstrate the value of the climate services. So this is the process that WMO is implementing in the region and in the projects, and the way that WMO support this full value chain of climate services is through an architecture that enhance the sharing of information. Can you go to the next slide, please? And this is linking the global, regional, and national centers in a unique architecture that facilitate the access and the exchange of the product. This is really is a cascading of information from global to regional to national centers, and helping the operational delivery at the national level. But there is also an important element here that the nation contribute to this architecture, and it is a bottom-up process, which is the data rescue, the data management, the quality control, and the monitoring and the feeding back to the regional and the global center to improve this product. So it is really a cycle that we are putting together to support the service delivery at the national level. So WMO works closely with the regional, the National Med Services and the regional center to strengthen this architecture of information, of exchange of information, exchange of products through several, also here, several steps. First, the identification and support of the capacity development needs at the regional and national level, then proposing measures to enhance the data product availability through the greatest system operationalization at sub-regional scale, organize the regional climate forum where the operational products are released, strengthen the feedback of improving forecast, and also assessing continuously the progress and the improvement of the delivery of the services at the national level. And so what are these products that WMO is supporting, is making available and would like to implement in the countries through the full value, the full value chain of climate services. Next slide, please. Here is just a list of products. It's not an exhaustive list, but some of those that we are implementing in our projects. And it goes from observation, data exchange. We have the WMO Integrated Global Observing System, the WMO Information System, the Climate Data Management. Then we have I already mentioned before, the global data processing and forecasting system, satellite data operational services that can be used, can be used and tailored, multi-hazard impact-based forecast and warning services, flash flood forecasting and warning guidance. We have Hydro SOS, which is the hydrological status and outlook system, particularly important in this case for the Paramos and the mountain system, drought monitoring and early warning system, and finally the National Framework for Climate Services, which is the mechanism to establish a framework within the nation and to have this user interface platform to facilitate the collection and of the user needs and requirements for tailoring the services, and also to understand if these services actually are working, are providing value to the users or not. So I think in this mechanism or in this vision, we really think that we link science-based climate services, hydrological outlooks, flood warning system, and all this mechanism that can support the sustainable management of mountain ecosystems and the mountain livelihood. I just want to conclude my intervention here, just mentioning that Enandes is the project that I just mentioned in the beginning is based on this vision, and will do the capacity development and the delivery of services in Colombia, Peru, Chile. But we also are working in another project called BRAVA, which stands for Building Regional Adaptive Capacity and Resilience to Climate Variability and Change in Vulnerable Sector in the Andes. And here is exactly the really similar to Enandes, but in Bolivia, Ecuador, and Argentina. And so we have a very exciting time ahead to work with the Andes community and the Med Services and the research community also in these countries and in this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. And now I would like to invite Bolivar. In Bolivar, given the fact that you spent your career in understanding the changes in the glaciers and snow in the tropical Andes in Ecuador. And you have a good understanding of their impacts in the mountain environments, but not only, downstream as well. I would like to invite you to present I'm going to say a regional perspective of what you see as necessary and how to enable the utilization of the scientific knowledge by institutions and by the local actors in the sustainable development of ecosystem services for the mountain regions in the region. So the floor is yours, Olivar. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Ulrica. Bueno, la siguiente, por favor. Bueno, voy a hacer una descripción breve de las evidencias sobre el cambio climático, sobre los Andes tropicales y las herramientas que nosotros desde el punto de vista de las personas que hacemos el monitoreo utilizamos para evidenciar este cambio en la criósfera. De manera resumida, en primer lugar, nosotros tratamos de establecer cuáles son los terrenos inestables y los deslizamientos asociados al cambio climático en alta montaña y al retroceso de los glaciares. También tratamos de determinar como un segundo paso, la ocurrencia de las avalanchas de nieve relacionadas con estas variaciones de la criósfera. Un tercer caso de estudio sería el conocer lo que ocurre con las grandes avenidas que se producen en alta montaña debidas al retroceso de los glaciares. En la zona andina y en los Andes tropicales especialmente está relacionado con lo que nosotros conocemos como lajares, o en el Perú se conocen como huaicos, los que se producen por la formación de lagunas al pie de los glaciares relacionadas directamente con su retroceso y los cambios climáticos ocurridos. Y finalmente, toda esta información se le da una aplicación desde el punto de vista social en la infraestructura y afectación en los sistemas de infraestructura, especialmente lo que tiene que ver con la disponibilidad del recurso hídrico en relación con el derretimiento de los glaciares y la disponibilidad de en las épocas de estiaje, básicamente, y que se asocia con el retroceso de los glaciares y que se lo puede evidenciar con la ocurrencia de lo que se llama los peaks o los derretimientos o las avenidas máximas ocurridas en las cuencas de alta montaña. En la parte superior derecha podemos observar una toma sobre un nevado de aquí del Ecuador, es el Chimborazo, es conocido a nivel mundial. Entonces se puede ver de manera clara y evidente, pienso yo, cómo se ha perdido la cobertura del glaciar. Este glaciar actualmente tiene un área de 12 kilómetros cuadrados y desde 1956 hasta 2020 perdió el 50% de su cobertura. En la parte inferior derecha podemos observar el ecosistema páramo, que es bastante similar en Colombia, Perú y Bolivia, y básicamente es para mostrar la gran diversidad que se tiene tanto en flora como en fauna. Siguiente, por favor. Bueno, aquí les muestro algunos detalles que nosotros obtenemos o los resultados principales que se obtienen del estudio de los glaciares. Uno de los principales parámetros que nosotros medimos a nivel mundial y específicamente en la zona tropical es el saber qué cantidad de glaciares tenemos, es decir, realizar un inventario. En los glaciares tropicales actualmente se tiene una cobertura de 2.340 kilómetros cuadrados de superficie, de los cuales aproximadamente el 80% están ubicados en los glaciares del Perú y el 20% restante está distribuido entre Ecuador, Bolivia y Colombia. Lo que principalmente nosotros tratamos de medir o de tener información es sobre las temperaturas, los futuros cambios en la precipitación y lo que había mencionado anteriormente, detalles sobre los estudios de los picos máximos de avenida que se ha producido en las cuencas asociadas de alta montaña. lamentablemente en la región andina estos estudios no son muy extensos y solo se han realizado en cuencas específicas, como por ejemplo en el Perú y en Bolivia. Lo ideal sería que estos estudios se repliquen en otras partes de la región andina para tener una idea más clara de cómo evoluciona el recurso hídrico en alta montaña. Siguiente, por favor. Aquí un detalle de los principales impactos que se atribuyen a los cambios en la criosfera. Básicamente tienen que ver con el retroceso de los glaciares, los cambios producidos por el retroceso y fusión de los glaciares en relación con la disponibilidad del recurso hídrico y los riesgos asociados al retroceso de los glaciares. Sobre la parte derecha se puede observar lo que nosotros utilizamos para conocer los parámetros meteorológicos en alta montaña. Básicamente son estaciones automáticas que son instaladas al pie de los glaciares o en las zonas de páramos. Y en la parte inferior se puede observar un detalle de otras mediciones que nosotros realizamos en toda la región y que están relacionadas con el conocer la precipitación de la manera más precisa posible. Eh, la idea es que tener las series más largas y completas de información. En la parte inferior derecha, por ejemplo, se puede ver una medición que se realizó durante el periodo de confinamiento que tuvimos aquí en los glaciares tropicales. Entonces, la idea es tener la menor cantidad de vacíos en la información y sería una de las metas que a través de estas conferencias incentivar a que los colegas en la región andina traten de tener las series completas y evitar la pérdida de datos. Siguiente, por favor. Aquí un poco ya los resultados más específicos de lo que nosotros realizamos o pretendemos en los Andes tropicales. Como les había dicho, básicamente aquí el retroceso de los glaciares está asociado con el riesgo que se produce para las poblaciones y la infraestructura. En la parte izquierda se puede ver la evaluación del retroceso de los glaciares Cotopaxi asociados con la actividad volcánica, y en Perú, en Colombia, se realizan estudios parecidos referidos al riesgo glaciar asociado al vulcanismo y al riesgo glaciar asociado al retroceso y la formación de lagunas en las partes inferiores, lo que produce los lahares, como había dicho anteriormente. En la parte superior derecha se puede ver el efecto producido por un fenómeno del desborde de laguna que tuvimos aquí en el Ecuador en 2017, corresponde a la zona del Chimborazo. Este es un fenómeno recurrente que se lo puede observar especialmente en el Perú por la gran cantidad de lagunas que se tienen ahí, y en Colombia es menos frecuente. Una de las cosas que nosotros como investigadores tratamos de hacer es transmitir lo que nosotros hacemos a la población de la manera más sencilla, en un idioma que ellos entiendan, y eso ayude a los tomadores de decisiones para que cuando se establezcan las medidas de adaptación, la población no ponga mucha, o sea, sea más abierta a estas medidas tomadas por los tomadores de decisiones. Eso es a breves rasgos lo que desde el punto de vista de la academia o de la ciencia hacemos para conocer el retroceso de los glaciares en los Andes tropicales. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Bolívar. And now I would like to invite Manuel. And my question to you, Manuel, is, given the fact that Kundesan is a key player in the Andean region, I would like to hear from you which pathways to success you see in terms of fostering collaboration at the regional level as a prerequisite to sustainable mountain ecosystems, which normally cross administrative borders, and therefore collaboration between actors and stakeholders becomes a necessity to achieve sustainable mountain development. Thank you, Manuel. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rodica, and thank you for the opportunity to make a few contributions, a few ideas for this panel. And I think that my colleagues in the panel have mentioned a lot of different elements in terms of a really important processes that have to be taken into account if we want to be effective in terms of linking science, policy, and action eventually on the ground. And I think that the work that we do in Condesan, that is focused in the Andean region, recovers a few of these dimensions that my colleagues have already mentioned, and I wanted to focus on two of them. One is more related to the need to link the policy-making cycles to the best empirical basis possible. And we know that we face a lot of knowledge gaps, like Bolivar was mentioning. We generally in the region face scarcity in terms of long-term monitoring systems, for example. So we basically are faced with the need to optimize what we have and move forward, right, in terms of trying to support these policy cycles with the best information available. That said, I think that collaboration and collective action is one of the key elements of this process of linking science and policy and action. And in one hand, and in the other hand, also, for example, Roberta mentioned this need to move from the generation of data, we can say, to actually make that information available for decision making, to foster specific policies and actions on the ground. So going from the role of net producers of data and information to the role of making that information available and useful for different goals. So in that sense, we use, I would say, three main lines of action. First is to foster and to encourage a broad participation in terms of agenda setting, in terms of identifying what are those knowledge gaps, what are those knowledge generation priorities that we need in order to mobilize action. And in that we are firmly convinced that it's not only a thing that the scientists do exclusively, but we need to generate these spaces where scientists and policymakers and local communities can interchange ideas regarding what do we need to know, what are those specific gaps that we need to fill in order to move forward in terms of policymaking and action. Also, an important priority in terms of linking sectors. When we are talking about climate change or land use and land cover change, on all these important challenges for mountain landscapes, we, by definition, need to engage to the agricultural sector, the energy sector. Of course, environment is an important sector, but we need to abandon this idea of, that try to compartmentalize these sectors and try to find solutions that are just particular to each of these. And of course, to engage multiple actors in terms of knowledge production and dissemination and access. Next, please. So I here wanted to provide an example of this approach that we use in our work in the Andean region. This is a specific initiative that we implement. Actually, we're in the consolidation phase of this Andean Forest Program, working in the 7 Andean countries with the support of the Swiss Cooperation and Development Agency and in alliance with other stakeholders in the 7 countries of the Andes. Here we have tried to develop and implement this idea of moving knowledge from the more scientific arena to trying to engage policymaking and engage action on the ground. One key ingredient here related to the question that Rodica was mentioning at the beginning is how do we create these networks of cooperation? And these networks can be networks of researchers that, you know, define very specific questions, research questions, and collaborate to generate relevant knowledge. In the example that I have there, trying to understand how climate change is affecting forests, mountain forest ecosystems along the whole, you know, Andean range that we know is really diverse and is really complex. But we want to, precisely because of that, we need, you know, these general regional visions in order to understand better those impacts. So networks of researchers is really important. Strengthened local capacities for long-term monitoring is also an important point in the agenda, and also try to integrate effectively the social and the environmental dimensions of this research. Next, please. And the other side of the equation, of course, where collective action and collaboration is key, is the implementation of actions on the ground. And here, we work with these mechanisms to foster communication, coordination, and collaboration at the country level. For example, the Andean Mountain Initiative, the Andean Community, those are platforms that we normally use and link to in order to promote intersectoral and dialogue and collaboration. At a more local level, it's very important to foster collaboration between local governments, because they are closer normally to the problems and to the needs of local communities in mountain areas. And you know, that's a really interesting way to promote collective action too. And of course, at the local level, try to find an appropriate scale to discuss these ideas of these priorities in terms of land use management, for example. How do we optimize synergies and try to minimize the inevitable trade-offs that sometimes are on the ground when we are trying to pursue different goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. And I want to thank you all for these outstanding contributions. And as we move forward for the next 5 minutes or so before the conclusion of the panel, I would like to invite you to reflect how the contributions from your respective, the perspective of your respective engagements could take advantage, as Carolina said, of the framework of this first virtual high mountain summit to advance the goals of collaboration, and as Manuel said, the multi-stakeholder engagement for the knowledge production that would support the goals of sustainability in the mountain environments, which is the goal of the summit. So maybe a minute or so each with some concluding remarks based on what you heard so far from this, from the other panel members, please. Carolina, maybe?
Thank you, Rodica, and I wish to also acknowledge and thank all my colleague panelists alongside here. Their presentations bring many multiple perspectives of the value of not only networks and the collective action that also partnerships bring. And this was part of the intervention that I provided at the very beginning of this session. It's very important to acknowledge the need to maintain the momentum and also the dialogue of exchange. It's also important for us to make sure that we exchange on experiences as we build knowledge and expertise on how to engage, not only on a scientific basis, but more importantly, I think on a relevant basis with those local communities with whom we seek to work with. And so that the timing of this particular event is absolutely crucial and important as a milestone by which we can also measure the extent to which we've responded to the aspirations and objectives that we set out for ourselves over a year ago, for example, at the High Mountain Summit. And this, of course, needs to continue. It's yet to be seen how the whole COVID-19 pandemic situation unfolds in the coming months and also in the coming year. But it's certainly given us an opportunity to reflect very deeply about our former ways and also how we can then improve and look for ways to also leverage and collaborate more closely with the colleagues. I think one thing that I've taken away from the presentation so far is that there are still opportunities to connect and in fact leverage our resources to make sure that we converge on that common objective going forward. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to have come to exchange and learn. And I think the summit itself has been a very important chance to be able to take stock of where we're at and what needs to happen next with much more conviction and objective in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. Stefan?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks also for all the panel contributions. I found them very enlightful, and in particular, I think what we covered with these few contributions already, and which is so important